Number 14, Love Lifted Me.
The 1918 influenza pandemic was the most severe pandemic in recent history. It was caused by an H1N1 virus with the genes of avian origin. Although there is not universal consensus regarding where the virus originated, it spread worldwide during 1918 and 1919. In the United States, it was first identified in military personnel in spring 1918. It's estimated that about 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population, became infected with this virus. The number of deaths was estimated to be at least 50 million worldwide, with about 675,000 occurring in the United States. Mortality was high in people younger than 5 years old, 20, 40 years old, and 65 and older. The high mortality in healthy people, including those in the 20 or 40 years age group, was a unique feature of the pandemic. While the 1918 H1N1 virus has been synthesized and evaluated, the properties that made it was so devastating are not well understood. With no vaccine to protect against influenza infection and no antibiotics to treat secondary bacterial infections that can be associated with influenza infections, control efforts worldwide were limited to non-pharmaceutical inventions such as isolation, quarantine, good personal hygiene, use of disinfectants, and limitations of public gatherings, which were applied unevenly. That was 102 years ago, folks. We went through it, and it sounds a lot worse that maybe this is going to turn out today. You know, there's things I don't understand. I don't understand, and I've heard this said before for that matter, that I don't understand how a brown cow can eat green grass and give white milk. Kind of sounds to me like it ought to be chocolate milk. But then I'm glad it's not, because the 3 Holsteins I used to milk, the milk would be black and white, and I wouldn't want to drink that. I sit down on the couch and I pick up my remote control and hit the button, and it turns the box, my Mediacom box on, and my TV all at the same time. I've got a little set of earphones that I use on my head on the couch. I've got a little Wi-Fi that I've hooked to my TV, and I can sit over there on the couch with them on, and I can hear, and I have my own volume. I can hear what's being said without making it too loud for Donna to hear the TV. I don't quite understand how that works. I know that there's radio or airwaves that are there that go through that, but I still don't quite understand that. A lot of things that I don't understand. Revelation 6:13, Revelations 8:12, Revelation 12:4 tells us that in the tribulation period, stars will fall to the earth. One case, 1/3 of the stars are brought down to the earth. How can that happen? I don't understand that. The stars are light years away from us. How can they just be brought down to the earth? That's beyond my imagination. Well, the only thing I can think about that is that God didn't use light years to get them where they are now. He just put them up there, and He can bring them right down if He wants to, any time. And time is nothing with God. Another thing that I think about, one scripture, Matthew 19:26. With men this is impossible. With God all things are possible. And men don't understand because we're not meant to. I think about the rapture, and when we're caught up to meet Jesus in the air, and I don't understand that. We're standing here, and if we were to be caught up right now, we'd go up this way. The people down in China, I suppose, would go the other way. We'd be getting farther apart, and we're a long ways apart to start with. How is God going to bring us all together? I don't know. It's beyond my understanding, but I still believe it because I know God's true and His Word is true. There's many things I don't understand. Brother Henson was one of my pastors several years back, and he was a good pastor, and he said that maybe God in heaven, maybe God and heaven are just another realm, and maybe that heaven is not as far away as we might think. We think of heaven as a faraway place, but just like these airwaves that are going through the air all the time, different realms, that maybe God is just living in a different realm, and He, being all-powerful, can come into our realm if He has to, and He can just immediately take us there. That might be the answer to that, I know, but I know nothing's too hard for God. God can do whatever He wants to do because He's God. He spoke the creation into existence, and He called it himself in one place, and others called it in Scripture the handiwork of God as he described the earth. It was easy for him to do. Creation wasn't a big, hard thing for God to do. When I think of handiwork, I think of maybe a woman making a quilt. And she's sitting there stitching that quilt. It's not strenuous work. It's fairly easy work. It would be tedious for me. But she makes that quilt, and in the end of that quilt, she has a beautiful, beautiful design. One of my favorite things to do is go to the fair and see those awesome quilts that women have made. And that's what God did. He made the earth. He made it awesome. He made it beautiful because he was God and just able to do that. And is there anything too hard for God? Has God done anything hard? Well, I think God has done one thing that was hard. It had to be in my mind hard. Hardest thing must have been for God when Jesus was talking to the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he said in Luke 22:42 and in other places, he said, "Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." I think that I like to picture God the Father and God the Son having that conversation there as Jesus was praying. And I think maybe there was a pause there when Jesus said that, because I don't think God wanted to put Jesus to death. I think that's the hardest thing he ever done. But I think maybe he said something to Jesus like, well, there's no other way. They can't escape without it, talking about us. I think he might have said that, looking ahead, there's a little boy named Marvin down there that won't get to heaven unless you do this. And your names could have been put in there. He could have said that about everyone because he's God. He understands what's going on today. And then after Christ said that to him, he said, and the scripture says, an angel appeared from heaven, strengthened him, and he was able to go through with the crucifixion because of what took place there. And so there's a lot of things I don't understand, but I think that I understand that God is in control. We've seen things today that I'm sure none of us have ever seen before with this. You'd have to be awfully old to remember the other one. And it was over 100 years ago. The stores are doing something. I see where Walmart is going to limit their stores to 20% of the capacity. They're going to make the aisles one direction. You can go down them only one way. That's so people won't be passing each other. And when the store gets full of the 20% before anybody else can go in, somebody has to come out. And that's how we're going to handle that situation. Other people, other businesses are doing things kind of that way too, and changing their way they've always done things. Colton Wong, you know who he is, plays for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was trying to encourage a bunch of boys because it's baseball season, especially in the schools. If you were going to school, a lot of them weren't getting to play because the season's ended for them because the schools are out. And he had encouraged them. He said, "Remember this: everything happens for a reason." And I think he's right. I think that was a good thing to say. I don't know the reason, but I've thought about this. When I see on secular TV religious things come up now, and people, the reporters are turning to religious people, or to Christian people, maybe I should say, to get their views. I've heard Franklin Graham do a wonderful job witnessing to some people. He just told it exactly how it was, how they needed to do to get saved. I've seen even a Catholic Archbishop in New York City say some awful good things and tell things right, even though he was a Catholic, that people could abide by. I see messages on billboards. Somebody already mentioned that. And I just see that different things are coming about. And I think it could be that God's bringing this on to strengthen Christians to give us a last stand for the end time. I don't know, but that's my thought on it. I don't really know. But I know He's got a reason. And God does what He does in His time. And one of these days He will end the plague. By the way, I didn't have this written down, but in Matthew and in Luke, I think, you can find the scripture where Christ is speaking, and He said that pestilence will come. He predicted that Himself. The word pestilent means disease or plague. And we're seeing prediction come true from Christ Himself right here in our situation today. Well, I think because of technology, we have a lot more than they did in 1918. They didn't have much back then. It's an incredible amount we have now, and I think maybe that's going to help us shorten this thing. I'm praying that it will. I pray every day that it'll either be shortened or He'll see us through it. I pray for all, especially the people of Grandview Church, that none of us will get this thing, this plague, if you want to call it that. And it is a plague for that matter. But I don't know that. But I think that because of technology, and we need to also remember that we've got the technology because of Him, and we need to thank God for the technology today. But I think our biggest weapon today is God, and I think without Him we never get through this thing. So let's thank God for what He does. And all I'm saying is, let's thank all the people, the health workers, even the military is getting in it now and taking apart the National Guard. We need to pray for those people too and thank them for the work they're doing. But let's remember that God is in control.